I was devilish yesterday?
Hey everybody, good morning and welcome to Reaper Pro Tips. Here we are, more or less mentally present. How was your Wednesday, everyone? Hello, Dragon Eye Miniatures. Hello, Valkyrie. Thank you for the sub. Hello, Mistim and Crispies and Sharky and Francis and Edgerjai and D. Clearman and Rax and Sentimental Minis and Nomad Zeke and Astro Squee and Sethany and Otter Mama and Iggy and Silverthorn and oh my gosh, there's so many. Am awake? Yeah, Silverthorn, I am with you on that somewhat. I was just talking to Justin about like, getting better sleep and how I've been trying to like troubleshoot my sleep lately because I have a Fitbit and it's evil. It gives me a sleep score every day. And lately I've been trying to not look at it in the morning and just kind of assess how I feel and then kind of compare. I have to say the Fitbit is on more than it's off so far. So I'm trying to like improve my sleep score and that's, it just seems to be kind of a crapshoot so far. I haven't been very successful. How are you? Oh, allergies. Yeah, and that's another thing that could contribute to my sleep being here or there, right? Is like I take an allergy pill, but if the air is really bad, then I'm gonna probably be snortier all night, right? So yeah, yeah. Oh, tea, good. Yeah, I already had one cup, and I got some coconut milk at the store yesterday, so I think I'm gonna beg David to make me a latte after after this stream. If I give him puppy dog eyes, he will make me a coconut milk latte. Hey, Jedi Jared. You sneeze in public, people are like pollen or plague. I know, right? You feel so guilty if you have a cough or a sneeze in public and you know that people are side eyeing you and saying, oh my God, is that person plagued? Why are they out? But there's so many allergies now, especially here with all of the trees like shedding stuff into the air, and a bunch of new flowers opening up now and all this stuff. So, on the other hand, there are hummingbirds around here, and I'm so thrilled about hummingbirds that like I actually like we got to see one like we went out to do our restaurant outing on Sunday, and we also have one that flies around right outside our window. So I'm like super happy about that. Yeah, right. Yeah. Hey, Coobs, how's it going? Lebralski, hello. And MCC War, thank you for the 5-month sub. Awesome. And on that note, remember you guys, you did hit total, so we are going to have an AMA. I saw a bunch of you put really good questions into the Ann AMA channel in our Reaper Discord. So if you have a question, go over and pop it in there. And I'm going to essentially on Friday go through as many of those as I can. I'm actually going to go in and make a long list today after the stream, so I make sure that I have some thoughts on them and can be somewhat ready for some of the questions leading up into that. And any question is fair. You could ask about me, my dog, my past, my sordid past, freelancing and how it is, pitfalls of freelancing. Yay. Especially in these times, right? Where so many of us, are trying it out just as an addendum, or we lost our jobs, or you're just having to make ends meet and stuff like that. So you could also ask about Reaper or paint development or any of the colors that we have. I can't go into like really in-depth stuff on formulas, but I can, if you're like, hey, this color, what is it good for? I totally can go into that. That's fun. So yeah. Yeah. When you get allergies later in life, Crispies, it can be rough. I've had them since I was 10, so I pretty much, there's been certain areas of the country where I've been able to live where I was pretty much allergy free. Actually, just pretty much when I was out on the East Coast, Baltimore. For some reason, nothing out there made me allergic, and for 6 months, I didn't have to take an allergy pill. It was crazy. I don't know, Francis, because they catch tiny little birds, tiny little insects for their protein needs, I've read, and there's a ton of those gnats and stuff, like, right in these redwood trees near us. So he seems to, like, run around out there getting that stuff. And he's mostly around the tree rather than around our balcony. But I did think about getting some flowers. Because I looked at the hummingbird feeders, and I'm like, well, they can attract bees, so can flowers, but yeah, I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. I do love them, though. He's a big green guy outside of our window, so he's one of the bigger ones. And there are a lot of, like, those kind of flowers around here in this area, so I'm not surprised that there are about its hummingbird population. Cheers. All right. Let us pop over to Minicam so we can chat and paint at the same time. What do we do here? We're going to do a whole bunch of how to make a whole bunch of browns work together when you've got stuff like this. Yeah, I think maybe. Let me grab some of my weirder browns out of here. Let's make sure I've got some weirder browns to work with. Well, I think I've got a saddle brown in here somewhere. That's one that people don't often use. Let me see. If not, I'll have to go looking. And we've got that. I'm just looking for all sorts of different leather colors that I could use. Could use a harvest brown and that. There are so many browns that you can use when you have to use different browns. Russet. I don't even have muddy with me. This is leather brown. Yay, perfect. I do not see my saddle brown. Blackened. All right, we've got some serious browns going on here. Alrighty. Good morning, RTB Army. Good. Yes, bees are good. I just don't want them, like, buzzing around me on my balcony. So I'm kind of up in the air on that, on the hummingbird feeder because of that. Although I did find a place that sells feeders that apparently resist, like, our bee proof, so to speak. Let's see, what other stuff do we want? I'm going to see if I have any other odd colors that I could do. But anyway, let's just rock with this. I don't have my my saddle brown, sadly, so we'll just have to kind of run. I can kind of equivalate it. So, all right, you've got all of these things on your turtle, and you're like, oh my god, all of it's leather, what do I do? Well, you just go with a lot of different types of leather, and this is how you also paint any model that, say, has maybe a ton of different types of leather on it. Like, and you're like, oh my god, I have to paint everything brown, but what browns do I use? In my experience, you can put up to 3 different colors of leather on a figure and have it work just fine. And the key is to vary your dark and light and vary the color of your leather. So one set that I might use for dark leather, and you could also go with the normal highlight for this, which will give you a reddish, more orangey-ish color, actually. But I like to use this as a triad, as an alternate leather triad for dark leather. Black and brown walnut and russet brown. You can also highlight russet, as I've said before, with driftwood, and we'll show you that. You want to use, maybe with that, you can use alongside of that a ruddy leather triad. So you can go with your ruddy leather and highlight it maybe with, what would I go up with? I might go up with kind of a golden color on that, some polished leather maybe. And I might also use as a shadow on ruddy leather, I might use a black and brown. But this essentially, ruddy leather will give you, usually you want to go up with an orangey color. And ruddy leather gives you a reddish. So here we've got a normal neutral dark brown. Then we've got a reddish leather here. And then our last leather is a light tan leather. So it's essentially it goes a little more yellow. And I might use something like, by the way, leather colors and skin tone colors are related. So usually, if it's a skin tone color, you can actually use it to highlight leather. One of the better ones for that, if you're dealing with a yellow tanned leather, is golden skin. As you can see, these colors look like natural shadows and highlights. And you can go up to golden highlight on that. So you can actually use that triad as a leather triad. You've, of course, got other options here. Instead of going with the reddish leather, you could go with more of like rich leather and polished leather. These are more of an orangey mid-tone leather. So we could do all of the above, really. Let's just try all of the above. Let's see here. Just checking that you guys are still talking about yellow jackets. Hello, Jay. And Sogram. Good morning, or Sogram. I'm not sure how to say your name, but hello and welcome. And I need to slug some water because already my throat is dry. All right. So let's rock some leather. First, I'll show you guys how the russet brown leather looks because I love it. Normally, another color, by the way, to use to highlight this ruddy leather would be like a burnt orange. So either burnt orange or orange brown, plus a bit of white, make great highlights for the ruddy leather and retain its reddishness. A thing to keep in mind when you're choosing leathers is what color you're using for your regular color, like your primary color. So if you're painting a mini and you've used a primary color of, say, blue, then maybe you want to go with a complementary color of leather, and that would mean like an orangey leather or just a neutral brown leather. Browns are muted oranges. That's what they count as on the color wheel. So if you keep that in mind, you know that they look really good next to blue. And so would something like Harvest Brown, which is a very orange leather. If you're painting something with greens, though, the reddish leathers tend to look really good because red is a complementary color to green. So stuff like that. With purples, the yellowish leathers, like leather brown. So think of your leather as a color. You can think of it as a neutral, but you can also think of it as a color. And sometimes that's useful when you're trying to figure out what to do. All right, let's just rock this. We're going to start with black and brown. We're going to pick a color. You also, when you're painting all these little guys, want to kind of figure out what's going to be dark and what's going to be light. So you might want to base coat everybody just out the gate to make sure that you have the colors nicely spread out before you start shading and highlighting and putting a lot of work in. And of course you can have colored leather, so there's nothing that says you can't make one of these bags, green or whatever. But I wanted to show you that you really can get a fair amount of variety. Don't panic when you've got a lot of different colors of leather. And of course, always aim for contrast in general. If you have a lighter color scheme, you can always introduce a dark leather for contrast. If you have no other dark colors on the figure and you really need some, you just pick up some black and brown here. All right, so the barrel's probably going to be lighter. The crate is probably going to be lighter. That means that I probably want to go dark around those. So once again, starting from, what do I know? What am I convinced of? What do I already know here? I know that I probably am going to make the boards here lighter and the barrel here lighter. If I do that, then I need to start with leather brown, say, for these guys. And that means I probably want to put a darker medium color here because it's right next to these. So let's do that. Let's do this big leather bag. In black and brown, which is, where'd I put it? There it is, 9137. Yeah, add it to the AMA, Saruki. Also, if you're on my Patreon, I think I talked about it a little bit in it would have been a PDF for $5 tier last year. It's red and green. It's the one on Dragon Red and Dragon Green. If you are not on my Patreon, I will happily talk about it on the AMA if we get to it, which hopefully we will. And then we're already starting saving up toward our next AMA and giveaway. I'm just going to paint this whole thing. To heck with painting around straps and stuff. The nice thing about a dark base coat is that I really don't have to line because this is kind of a shadow color. So in that case, I can just paint over everything with my dark brown. So we're going to start just blocking this in. And actually this bag is big enough that I may be able to do a little leather texture for you guys. We'll see. The bigger an item or a model, the more you can get away with actually adding some texture to it. The true place that textures shine is on really big models like 72 millimeter and larger, and busts. Busts especially, because you're getting so large at that point. Let's see here. Oh, thanks for the link to the Patreon, Zero. Zero has Patreon linked me, patreon.com/paintingbig. Thank you all so much for all of you who are already patrons. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you. It is my primary income now since I'm out here and no longer at Reaper physically. And it really helps me to know you guys support me. Like it helps the brain case and the mentality, and it also just helps keep Kiri and dog biscuits. So especially because the other day I was looking at dog biscuits, I'm like, Kiri, these are really expensive. Kiri has an expensive biscuit habit. We have some cheap dog biscuits, but she doesn't like them as much as she likes the little peanut butter cookies from Castor and Pollux. Base coat. All right, so Mathophile. Base coat is honestly the first color you lay down in my terminology. Base coat, that's it. First color you lay down. It could be a shadow, could be a highlight, could be a midtone. Doesn't matter. When I say midtone, that is the color that I want the model to be, or that part of the model to be, rather. So I'm going to be like, but a base coat is essentially your base, the base color that you put down to work everything off from. So they are not synonymous with the main color or dominant color. It does not matter. I'm likely going to cover almost all of this with russet brown. So then this color will end up being a shadow. But it just I like to work dark leather that way. So. But yeah, but for me, base coat is really the coat that is the base for everything else that you layer on top of it. That's the thought behind that name. When I say midtone, that's the color, like for this, probably russet brown or russet brown with a little bit of driftwood is going to be the midtone. That's going to be the color I want most of it to look. Because this is a dark brown leather. If I had started with walnut, I could have made black and brown my midtone, but it may actually have not been quite light enough. Let me make sure. I want to zoom in on this, and then I want to focus. There we go, nice and sharp. Hey, planner. Hey, hello everybody. Whoever I'm missing here, I got. Oh, I know, Crispies, those dental sticks. Kiri loves those too, but yeah, they're just so expensive. So we Yeah, Mathophile, everybody's got like a different way of talking about it, so it's good that you ask. But for me, base coat is like basic coat, the base that you work everything off of. So there's not, because these colors are so dark, there's not a lot of difference between them. You can still see that color as a highlight, but it's not really coming up as much as I would like it to. Especially not if I'm going to be doing textures. I don't know. Let's see here. I guess as it dries, I can see it a little bit more. You can see the streaks there of the russet brown. So yeah, I'll keep going with this because it's going to be subtle and we can always build it up a little bit more. Now I'm looking at the actual wrinkles in the fabric because that's where texture is going to show up. The natural wrinkles are gonna be where you get the folds are gonna be creating texture. When it comes to leather, that's how creases are made, is the natural folds. And with leather, you've got two different sets of folds. You've got the creases and folds that come from the wear and tear on the leather, and then you've got the creases and folds that were part of the hide of the animal that was used, like the natural creases and folds that the animal accumulated while it was alive. So you kind of have a combination of those things. You want to pay attention to the wrinkles that are on the leather, like there's creases in this leather. So you don't want to ignore those because those are definitely like wear and tear, right? But you also might want to introduce some animal texture at some point. Now this bag might not be big enough. We'll see. I can try it. It may look... What happens if you try to put texture on something that's too small is that you get... It looks very artificial. It looks kind of fake. It doesn't look very realistic. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, one thing I probably will do here is I'll probably paint this strap across the leather a different color. Because... otherwise it's not going to stand out. So I may go with a lighter color here. And this is where you're just going to alternate your leather colors, right? You could use 4 different colors of leather on all of this and everything would stand out and it would look interesting. But for these sort of things, if I just tried to paint this as a brown like the rest of it, it would be kind of boring. I can instead kind of use a lighter leather color and or even a contrasting color, like an accent color, like a red or a blue or a green, you know, whatever you want. Since this strap is here to hold it onto the turtle's back. So you could go with a brighter color if you want. Let's mix the highlight for this. Now I'm going to show you guys, I really love the color that this makes for leather. Russet brown plus driftwood. It's not an obvious mix, but what it does is it creates a really soft, neutral brown that isn't terribly saturated. It's not bright. But it's also, because the russet brown is so intense, is so rich of a brown, it's also not terribly... muted. And so what it is it's a great color to use on almost everything. It goes with intense colors. It goes with muted colors. It's a really good kind of helper color. I talk about helper colors a lot in the Dark Sword DVD. I've gone away from that terminology a little bit, but it still is applicable. There are certain colors that tend to go and play well with almost everything, and neutral dark browns are one of those colors. And what you're creating here with russet brown and the driftwood is a muted dark brown, because driftwood is, it's a yellowish brown, and so is russet, but it does have a little bit of gray in it, and so, but it's only a little, so it doesn't mute it out too much. So the color that I'm getting when I'm mixing these two, there you go. So that's our black and brown, that's our russet brown. You can see they're actually quite similar. But then you come up here, and this is about, I want to say a 1-to-1, 2-to-2 drops of driftwood and russet brown. There we go, 162, 199. Really recommend these two colors if you want a color for nice, neutral, dark leather. Got so many paint bottles near me that we are, they're piling up. Yeah, Labrowski, thank you. We mentioned it yesterday, but thank you for bringing that up again. Anybody who wants to pick up one of my the well palette I use, and I may actually pick up a couple extras for future classes, right? But it's on sale for $4.99 right now on Cheap Joe's Art Supply. So you can get the 28 well porcelain palette for that much. So we totally need to totally love bomb Cheap Joe's and order a bunch of these well palettes. But yes, so thank you, Labrowski, for reminding me, because I'd forgotten. I would have missed my op. I do love this palette. I like it, and the reason this palette is better than oh no, Francis. Just looking at all this. Okay, cool. But yeah, since I want to start teaching some workshops once we're a little bit more open here, I thought about picking up a couple extras just for that. But the reason these are I think, superior to other well palettes is that the wells are so small. So you don't need many drops of paint and water to get to the point where your paint's going to stay at the consistency you want. Usually about 8 drops is the sweet spot, 8 drops or more, and your paint will stay wet and good for quite a while. I'm going to take my mixture now, and I'm going to continue to emphasize the kind of creases that I picked up with my You can kind of see them. Let me get this palette out of my frame because it does make everything show up a little bit better. There we go. So you can see I put kind of streaks across the top. And now I'm going to kind of go back and highlight those streaks a little bit. And maybe I'll kind of try to make more of a streaky texture to imply really worn leather. I'll start to do that texture now. Because technically I laid down my shadow color first. Then I put a lot of russet brown over the top of it. And just left some blackened in the shadows. And now I'm coming in with this color. And now I can start kind of laying out a little bit of texture. Like maybe even like do some sections and some streaks. We can try to do, you can see how it's starting to come up. Kind of like pay attention and you do want to look at, at this point after doing all the leather on my Soldier 76 model, I can do leather in my sleep, but you may want to look for a good leather example before you do this. Just so you can make sure that it looks correct. But essentially you're kind of doing both. Yeah, you're making some stuff. Hey Gridlock, what's up? Let's see here. Yeah, they're really, really cheap. Yeah, find friends to go in on it with you. Maybe. Dragon Eye. I'm kind of tempted to just buy like 10 and then make them available at my classes. Like just pretty much say, if you want to buy one of these, you know, you could buy it for like, you know, what I paid for it. That would be kind of a nice feature for my seminars, I think. That way people can get the product and they're just paying me back and they're getting a nice discount for taking my class. I think I might do that actually. They're going to be thinking, what the heck, when they, you know, see me order 10. So let me get... The problem with dark colors is sometimes it's hard to get them to show up on camera when they're surrounded by light. But you can kind of see how I've got a bit of texture coming in on here now. A little bit of creasing. The other way you can do leather texture is stippling, and that gives you a suede type texture. I kind of wish I could go and get my soldier in my... Maybe I'll get them toward the end of stream. I don't want to wake up Kiri if I can help it. So now we're getting like that. You can see it's kind of a stripy mottled texture. Now, if I feel like my folds aren't very consistent, like that I'm not doing, because this probably is one piece of leather rather than being stitched together. So I do want to make sure that my creases are consistent. So if I want to suggest that there was a crease going across this whole thing for like the hide on an animal, like from the animal when it was moving, I kind of want to grab one of these and maybe take my shadow color and put a line that I can connect then to make it look like there's a consistent crease. Because you will have these creases going across it, which are creases from the bag being smushed, you know, but repeatedly over time. But then you're also going to have those animal creases, so the ones from the original animal. So if I can emphasize like one or two of those, then that adds realism. And I can split that off actually there. And just kind of essentially think of rivers. Think of rivers that are splitting into streams. When you're doing leather, a lot of creases will happen that way. You can see it on your own palm, right? This crease comes in and then it branches, right? You've got branches. You got a branch here. So when you're doing leather, you can look at your own skin for suggestions on how that should look. Morning, Daffodil. Alrighty. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Let's do our next layer of highlighting. This will be mostly driftwood, less russet. And the key here is how much of your dark do you keep around, right? Obviously starting dark, I've gotten a very dark leather here. I'm going to go up and just put a tiny bit. Actually, instead of a full drop of russet brown, I'm just going to take a brush full. Here's my driftwood. You can see how much lighter it is. But I don't want it to be that much lighter, so I'm going to put a brush full of my previous mix in. And this is the way that I tend to organically mix on this palette, is I put down my next highlight color, and then I grab a brush full or a couple of brushfuls of my previous color, mix them in, to bring them just a little closer together and make them harmonize. And I do this with pretty much all of my mixing. I tend to mix pretty organically. You'd be doing the same thing on a wet palette if you were using it. You'd just be doing it slightly differently. You know, you'd be mixing the brushfuls as you go. Yeah, you do need to go to the Discord and put pictures of your pets, pictures of your kitties and doggies. Because everybody loves cute animals, and right now we all need a dose of happy. So, totally appreciate all of the happy. And cute kitties are a good happy. So we're thinking of going to Big Basin. The park's opened up here in California. And I've been wanting to see giant trees and to take Kiri to see giant trees. So David and I are probably going to Big Basin this weekend and taking the Kiri dog. It'll be a bit of a drive. She likes drives. So, all right. Well, let's see here. I kind of lost a little bit. When I brought this crease in, I lost a little bit. Lost a little bit to a shadow up here. All right. So now we're going to let's see how close I can get on this one. Let's see here. Close, get close. There we are. All right. So let's see if I can stay in focus. So now if you really want to be cunning, and usually, like I said, this is much bigger on a larger model, or much easier on a larger model like a giant. But what you can do is come in and think about the light source, right? Light's going to be falling top down. That means the upper side of all of these creases is going to be highlighted. So if you're very good and you have a tiny little brush like me, oh, you need to thin your paint. Remember, if you have a long, thin brush and your paint is not coming off of it, you need to add more water to your paint. Just a little. Just a little and reload. If you're using a tiny brush, the reason the paint's not coming off of it is probably because it's dry down there. That's the problem with tiny brushes. It's hard for them to hold enough paint to stay wet. Alrighty, here we go. So I've already started kind of, you can see, doing a little bit. There. A little bit. I'm using kind of an interrupted stroke here, meaning a stippling stroke. I'm dabbing because I want to suggest that kind of bunchy, remember that bunchy leather texture? Yeah, so we're kind of suggesting that by using a lighter, let's see here. Let me make sure I've got it. And this is really light compared to the previous layers, but what I can do then afterwards is glaze. So mostly I want to just get that suggestion of texture and 3D, which is why we're highlighting the quote-unquote top of each of these little bunchies. And then if we need it to be more subtle, we can bring it down. This also is a good way to make the leather look nicked up, because as your light, if you're doing little dots or dashes with your lightest color, it's going to kind of look like the surface has abraded a little bit of the leather. And so it could just be abrasion and not actual highlights. Like it could just be raised areas getting dinged up, right? Hey, hello, Skelsey. Kiri, sadly, Kiri can't go into the park proper. We're going to drive out there, and David and I will take a short hike and leave her with plenty of water, because it's been nice out here. It's been nice and cool. And then I'll take her for her short walk along the trail there's a paved road that dogs are allowed to walk along, and it's still pretty. It still goes past like rivers and big trees, but not the biggest trees. So Kiri will be pretty good. I mean, she'd much rather go with and sit in the car for a half an hour and then, go for a walk and go home than sit at home. So, but yeah, sadly, a lot of national parks and markers don't allow dogs, and that's both, sometimes a wildlife danger, because dogs can really aggravate bears because they just don't understand. It can be pretty dangerous to walk your dog in an area where there are active bears. But yeah, also because people don't clean up after their dogs and all that sort of thing. So, all right, so I've outlined a bit of leather texture here, and we're very close to it, so it looks, but if we let's drop back down. Let's refocus. So now, at a distance, that's interesting. I did go really dark with that crease, and I may want to bring that up. I think I want to do a glaze over this to knock it down. Yeah, my dog being huge, stroller will not hack it, Francis. Also, I have to say, oh, yeah, Salmari. Exactly, right? Your dog doesn't know, right? It doesn't know the danger. It's not like they run into mountain lions every day and you can train them about it, right? So, yeah, I'm okay with there being some limits on people having their dogs out on trails. So I'm going to mix up a glaze of russet brown. I just want to knock down a little bit this harsh color. So I'm just going to paint it right over the top. It's going to act like a filter on a camera. It's going to take down and harmonize, unify that texture and make it a little bit less over the top. And now it's going to look more like leather. And here I can come in also. I probably want to grab a little bit of this, maybe a little bit of both. And minimize that fold because my crease got really big there. This is the problem. This is why I say that texture tends to look fake when you don't do it on a really large piece. Because it's easy to leave these big creases and then it really does not look real. Because in real life, these creases would be almost too small to see if you were looking at the item from this far away. So that's why usually this stuff works better on big models. And especially works great on busts. Where you can go into detail, you have a big enough space, and you can make it look real. But the technique here, at least, I can demo for you guys, even if it looks a little bit fake on Mr. Turtle. Now I'm going to go and get in my little pebbles over here. And if I want that kind of worn look, what I'll do is I will come back and even maybe lighten this a little bit. And really do some worn look around the edges, because that's where you really would get rub off, right? It's around all the areas that would rub against anything. So like the edges of the bag. So we'll do that in a second. Let me get this kind of stuff marked in. Oh, thanks for the gift subs, Planner. And Celadon Oceans, thank you for the resub at 9 months. Awesome. Let's see here. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Twisted Oma, you need to like catch those people in the act. It's like, I just don't get people. It's like, I just do not get bad pet owners. There's just... The other day, I was here in our complex, and one of the other apartment owners came up from the garage with his 2 dogs, and they're Goldens. And they come right over to see Kiri. Kiri's on a leash. These dogs are not on the leash. And then he says to me, oh, I gotta get this one away from you. She gets aggressive with other female dogs. And I'm like, why is your dog not on a leash if it gets aggressive? And you know it does, right? Like, I just don't get people. I just don't get it. It's like, your dog does not need to be free and not on a leash if it attacks other dogs. I don't get it. I just don't understand. To me, that's just very inconsiderate pet ownership. And you're setting your dog up for failure, because if it attacks another dog, you could be in trouble. Because if some dog attacked Kiri, you bet I'm calling the cops. And in some states, that means a death sentence for your dog. So, people are weird. Yeah, I just don't get it. I mean, it's just... It's like they don't think about repercussions, right? I just don't get it. Yeah, I get mad at other pet owners. Sometimes I think I should not own pets just because I get so mad at other pet owners sometimes when they pull that sort of thing. Because I know enough about dog training and dog, psychology and, stuff now after owning big shepherds for so many years. And I grew up with dogs and was in dog training when I was a kid. And gone to dog shows and, doing all this stuff. You learn a lot about dogs. And one of our dogs was reactive. So I actually ended up learning a lot about dog psychology there because I had to kind of rehab him. Yeah, it's just, you get so mad at other people sometimes, other humans that are kind of dog oblivious but have dogs anyway. So sometimes I think maybe I should just, not have dogs anymore because I get so angry at others. All right, so got some nice texture on that bag. And now I can glaze it like I did the one below. grab some of that russet brown, paint it right over the top in a thin layer. It'll darken everything just a little bit. Also blend it in. Yeah, stitches, not acceptable. Not acceptable. Right, see, and that's the thing. You've got to call the police. And the thing is, if you're interfering in the fight, I'll take the hit for Kiri. I don't want my ancient dog to get bitten. I'd rather take the bite. And if they bite a person, you better bet it's calling the cops, right? So, yeah, try to be responsible dog owners, everybody. Try to think of repercussions. I know everybody's dog loves to be off leash and to have that freedom, but if your dog has issues, then maybe your dog just sacrificed that freedom. I mean, it happens with people. People are smart enough to know when they have issues that they, can't do this or that or the other thing. But dogs are not, so... Just trying to put some little bit of a rub off here. I'm kind of stippling the stroke on the edge of the bag. Especially on the edge of the top up here. So just do a little dabbing stroke. And I'm actually using a different brush today. I'm using a Da Vinci Maestro 0, but it's a 35, which means it's a liner. It's actually a much longer, bigger brush. And you can use this interchangeably with my usual brush. It is long enough, even though it's very thin, it's big enough to carry a fair amount of paint. And I can still, as you can see, I can do very fine brush strokes with it, even though it's huge, because it has a very sharp tip. It is not the size of the brush, it is how sharp the tip is and how well it carries fluid that determines like how fine of detail you can do. I can do eyeballs with this brush. It's huge, but I can do eyeballs with it. So size doesn't matter. You can, it's more important to get a brush with a really good tip that's going to hold the tip. A lot of people buy really micro brushes out the gate, and although those can have their uses, they aren't as versatile because they don't carry as much paint. And I find that there's a very definite way that you need to use them, which is you kind of have to pre-wet them and then load them with paint, and keep a little moisture in the brush. That way it can actually, keep the paint wet long enough for you to utilize that tiny size. A lot of canvas painters call that kind of brush a spotter because they usually use it just for pinpoint stipples like this. Yeah, the Baba Yaga hut. I mean, the nice thing about the Baba Yaga hut, Sharky, is that it's a really, you can paint it fast and it'll still look good. This is the thing with terrain. You can also take a lot of time over it and make it look amazing, but you could do it either way. Oh, great. That's great, planner. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's not the dog's fault. Okay, some dogs are genetically wired badly. This is a thing, just like with people. But in general, a lot of dog misbehaving is just, just bad signaling from the owner. And it's hard, right? We don't speak dog. It's like having a little alien in your household, and you have to figure out how they tick and how to talk with them and how to communicate. And it doesn't come naturally, right? Like, David's never been a dog owner, and it's taken him, he's learning slowly how to deal with Kiri. So, but, I've had years of it, so it's a little more easy for me. Let's see here. Yeah, Zambies. Yep. Yeah, obviously I'm a shepherd person too, so hello. Oh, yuck, Sephiroth. See, that's just wrong. Yeah, you probably, you might be getting some paint down into the ferrule if the other brushes aren't holding a tip. Math file. Also, don't judge whether they hold a tip when they're dry. Judge that when they're wet. So any brush, no matter how good of a brush, like when it's dead dry, it might not hold a tip. Like, this is my Da Vinci Maestro. It's the one I use for competition painting. Look at how rough it looks, right? But the important part is when I wet it down, Does it hold a good tip? And the answer is yeah. Now it really does hold a good tip. So that means I'm fine. Don't judge your brushes when they're dry. Now, if you're doing this, if you wet the brush and it still splits, then you've probably actually got either a structural issue if it's brand new, or you've got a care issue. But you can see how great of a tip this holds when it's wet. So as long as it's holding a good tip when it's wet, your brush is fine. The most common cause of brushes splitting like that is paint getting up here into the metal part. And if you see a dark ring or discoloration around the base of the brush right there, base of the hairs, then you can be pretty sure you've got some paint up there. And usually what I use is Windsor & Newton Brush Cleaner and Restorer. It's a fluid. I put a little bit of it into my one of my ceramic wells, and I roll the brush around gently, like so, just so that it gets sucked up into the ferrule. And then I'll wipe it off on a paper towel, and I'll do that until it comes clean. So that is possible. Now, like I said, the tip with micro brushes is get water in them, right? And instead of drying them on a paper towel, squeeze them out. That way you've still got water in there, but it's not big droplets. It's not going to interfere. Then put your paint on the tip and paint with the micro brush. That way you've got enough fluid to keep the paint wet so that it gets to its destination. But that's the tip on how to get the mileage out of micro brushes. Image of betrayal. Actually, I've gotten in this weird habit, and it's because a friend of mine did get cancer, and they kind of thought it might be the brush licking habit. They weren't sure, but you just get a little bit, after something like that. So, what I do is after I wet my brush, I've gotten in this habit. I just pull the brush here, right along this crease of my finger, and that reshapes it so that it has a perfect tip. See? You might have to practice a little bit, but I found that I used to just squeeze them out. Or I used to lick my thumb and just, do that to get them pointed. But as long as it's a healthy brush, it should hold a point with just water. So I just do that. And you can even see the water still in my hand there. So I just do a squeeze. Squeeze. Mathophile, if it's a curving tip, it's going to be a synthetic brush. Natural hair brushes like these Kolinsky Sables will never curve. Unless you leave them in your paint water jar. Never, ever, ever leave your brushes in your paint water. Rinse them out and put them down, or rinse them out and paint with them. Do not leave them in the paint water. It actually does not help. It harms your brushes irreparably. It's bad. Don't do it. If you have not in the habit of leaving your brushes in your paint water and you're still getting a curve at the tip, you are using a synthetic brush, which means it has a plastic bristle, at least partially. There are some brands that make slightly higher quality plastic or do a blend of real and synthetic hair, and those may take longer, but they will all eventually get that curl. And yeah, a sable, I don't even use brush soap, honestly. But that's because I rinse my brushes compulsively. I'm just so anal about it. I'm just trying to catch up make sure I'm answering all your questions. Alrighty. Sharky, painting while working. I'm painting while working, but that's because painting is my job. All right, so we use big brush. Oh, here we go. So this is big brush. Big brush says, oh no, look, I'm a bad brush. No, it's not. It's not a bad brush at all. It just needs to be a squeeze. Water and squeezed. And now it has a beautiful razor sharp point. So now we can go back to our edging here. Let's do a little bit lighter. So anyway, this is a pretty good dark leather as it stands, guys, just so you know. It looks very dark, but as we fill in other subjects around it, let's do a light leather. Let's do our leather brown, 90-30. Let's see, I also wanted a good shadow for leather brown, by the way, if you don't want to go to earth brown and you want a little bit more rich or golden of a leather, is chestnut gold. So these two colors work great together. And then you can go up to the tanned leather highlight, or like I said, you can use like a golden skin, which is a little bit more muted, but still works great with this. This is a great triad for light leather right here. Take a photo. 90-73, 90-30, 9092. There is this is a weird, what I call an off triad, where you can make a triad with paints from totally different triads themselves, and they work great. So very good light leather triad. So let's actually, it also is good for things like barrels. So let's do the barrel. Things like these little hat boxes are good places to put splashes of color, because something like that could be done in a fabric or something where it could be a different color very easily. Whereas barrels tend to just be barrel colored. Crates tend to be just crate colored. And then this pot here, you could probably actually do metal on. Then you've got, looks like a blanket roll or a sack. Yeah, like you could make the bottle a color. You know, there's accents here that you could use too. So look around, think what color things would be. Let's get some 9030 out here. 9030 is a nice, really nice leather color. It is also a great color to start with for things like lions. You can start with leather brown, go up with tanned leather and amber gold, and you will get a great lion color. I'm just going to, again, paint the whole thing the same color. Even the straps. I can always go and paint the straps something different. It's just faster to paint the whole item. Let's see here. If the tip is bent, is it already too late? Adorn, if it's a good sable brush and you've just left it in the paint water and that's why it's bent, it is not too late. Get some brush soap and reshape your brush, or some hair. You can use hair conditioner too if you have it in the house. Just essentially reshape it, leave it sit, get it out and try to use it every once in a while. Rinse it out, reshape it with the conditioner, leave it sit with the conditioner or the brush soap in it, and you can essentially retrain. If it's a natural hair brush, it should slowly retrain itself not to have a curve. But if it is a synthetic brush that is just the way they go, what happens is the plastic just abrades as it gets rubbed against the surface of models. And then that's the way it is. It's split and it's warped and it won't go back to its normal shape. So that's why those brushes are cheap. With brushes, guys, you get what you pay for. Big time. And using a natural hair, a really good sable brush can level you up instantly in this hobby. Because not only does it carry paint a little bit better, and not only does the paint come off the tip smoother, they usually hold their tip much better. You can control what you're doing. So if you are having, I am all, as you all know, I am all for anything that reduces the amount of frustration associated with this hobby, especially when you're learning. Get a good brush. Just splurge, you know, like a good Kolinsky sable is going to run you $15 easy, you know, but it's also going to last months and months and months and months and months longer, sometimes even years longer than the $2 brush you bought and went through in 2 weeks. So it's all, you know, relative, right? Oh, thank you, Planer. Yeah, Planer asking people to support my Patreon. I do have a Patreon. It has a lot of content on it because I've been working on it since the end of 2018. So we have a good year and a half of content at many levels now. Thank you, everybody who supports me. You are all wonderful. You make me happy every day. Thanks. Make me happy and keep carrying dog biscuits, as we were originally talking about, which is very important. All right, so at this point, now the cool thing is here we can kind of go either way, right? We can put a light strap on this little thing, if we're going to do it all in leather. And since we have our dark colors open, we can put dark straps around the barrel. And that will be fine. Just kind of blocking this in. Could also put a colored strap if you want some color, you know, no harm in doing that. There's always possibility that there would be like a cloth strap here that was colored, or a dyed leather, although that's unusual unless he was using somebody's old belt. But mostly you want contrast. What colors were those for the lion? Tanned leather, amber gold. Actually, it's you start with leather brown, just like I've got here. It's making a triad out of adjoining colors. So normally leather brown is the highlight in the earth brown and muddy brown triad. Instead, you use it as a shadow, and you use tanned leather as a midtone, and you use amber gold as a highlight. So, though I give you triads all, think outside the box. Master Series has so many colors in it that there are many ways you can think outside the box and utilize a color in a different way with different colors, and it will still work awesome. I need to get in focus. 1 second. $16 for 7 GW paints is actually a sale. That's a big sale. Somebody liquidating planer. All right, so now let's get our strap. Let's see, I'm going to use a kind of the middle color for this strap here. Now, some of these are actual bands around the barrel. I think these are the 2 ropes right here, the crisscrossing ties. So kind of look at what is everything, what is everything on this. But honestly, as long as you alternate your lights and darks and your reddish colors, golden colors, and brown colors, you could paint everything on this Turtles pack brown and it would still be visually interesting and awesome. Uh-oh, okay, a little bit of leakage there. Let's see here. Actually, this one, I'm currently using a Series 35 size 0 even. Oh, color's no longer being produced. Yeah, they do change their paint line often. Yeah, Series 7 brushes are good. I recommend the miniature series. A lot of people buy, but they don't mean miniature painting, guys. Those are a more wedge-shaped, shorter brush with a wider body. If you do a lot of wet blending or side blending, like pushing your brush this way, then those wedge-shaped brushes can be very useful. I personally don't find them so because I'm doing a long, thin stroke. Like you see here, you know, I'm doing long, thin, or stipple strokes. So for me, the wider brushes, it doesn't really help me. But your mileage may vary, and as with all things, you should try it out. I did try one for a while and see if I liked it. Always try it. See if you like it. Now for the bands on this barrel, since I went with a lighter color for the barrel itself, I probably would go for a darker metal, like a darker steel on these bands around it, or even a kind of a dark bronze, just again for more contrast. Windsor Newton Series 7 normal series size 0 is very similar to the brush, the Da Vinci brush that I use normally. All right, so there. Now, one thing that often benefits when you have a light base coat, it's easy to lack depth. So sometimes that's where a wash actually comes in really handy, especially on something like this barrel that has texture. So we could actually build a wash with our russet brown if we want to kind of tie these guys together. We could also use a different brown. But if I take the opportunity to do a wash in the russet, I'm tying these things together color-wise. So, and I could put it over everything. I could put it over my little strap here and all of that. So maybe I'll do that. Yeah, I mean, just get over it. The mathophile, you got to think, you are the mathophile, so you understand value and math. So not only just the sticker price, but the durability needs to be factored in. And like I said, if you take good care of these brushes and you don't leave them in your paint jar and you rinse them frequently when you use them, and every once in a while you brush soap if you have to, they will last for years, literally years. Like me painting over 40 hours a week, it took me 6 months to run through a brush. And that's over 40 hours a week. So unless you're a full-time painter, you're probably going to have your brushes for years. And even then, like, sometimes I can still use them for really fine stuff. All right, so 1 drop of that. Where's my brush on sealer? There it is. How do we build a wash? Very, very carefully. We build a wash with 1 drop of the paint. We mix up our brush on sealer very well until we cannot see the little bead in the bottom. That way you know that all of the flatting agent is in solution. 4 drops of your brush on sealer. 2 drops of water. And then you adjust it depending on how it looks. So mix that up. Russet brown is a pretty strong color, so I think this is probably going to make a pretty good wash. Now notice, since we have a wash and a glaze next to each other, although the glaze has dried out a bit, but notice here, when the glaze was strong, look at how little the glaze has colored the porcelain palette here. See how it's very, very faint. It's very much not really there. Now look at how strong the wash is. You can see that this is a thinner application than the wash. The wash is thicker. Both are very watery paint, but the wash definitely has more body than this little glaze did. The problem is the core materials that you're dealing with, Mathophile. Sadly. No amount of cleaner can knit plastic bristles back together. Alrighty, so now I'm going to test my wash out, just putting it over the top. You want a lot of it. You want to always apply a wash like copiously, because you want it to pool. You want it to get in the cracks, and that means you need to have a bunch of it on the model. I'm also going to paint it right over the top of that strap. And you want it, that's why it has a lot of body. You want it to pool. Let's get it close in. There. So you can see how much this is pooling. Now I don't need all of this pooling. I do actually, since I just kind of rinsed out my brush, I'm going to use the tip of it, squeeze the water out, and then use the tip to wick off some of this excess, because we don't need this much. But we do want it to be in there outlining all those nice slats in that barrel, so we don't have to do that by hand. Just saves us a little time on something like this. Yeah, exactly, Silverthorn, right? It's all style. It's all style. So sometimes you want a shorter and wider brush, you know. Maybe you want a different shape. Maybe you want a different size. I love Da Vinci, but it's not for everybody. And my friend Jennifer Haley, who, you know, is also an amazing painter, she used to really like filbert-shaped brushes. And she also loved the Windsor Newton Series 7 miniature series that I said were wider and wedge-shaped. And that was because she did a lot of blending, pushing the paint sideways instead of doing the feathering stroke that I did. So it really depends on your style. It's not a bad, a brush can be not a bad brush and still not for you. I mean, that's true of any painting technique or any palette or anything like that. That's why we all paint differently, and why there are so many amazing painted miniatures in the world, is we are all different. So now we can still see a suggestion of the texture, but as we fill in other areas around this dark bag, note the texture gets a little less distracting, because now we're going to have a lot of other stuff fighting for attention. So this is kind of a lesson on kind of Easter eggs, right? If you want to hide some subtle textures so that people only see it, like maybe when they're close up, or maybe it's kind of an Easter egg where they kind of discover it as they're looking at your model. Surround it with distracting things, and then only when they get close to it are they going to go, oh wow, you did the texture on that. Now some people don't like that. A lot of people, they would prefer all of their great work to really project from moment one. But I actually kind of like the Easter egg thing. I like to have well painted things, something that looks well painted from a distance that people can go wow, but then when they get closer and they really see what I've done, then I really like to wow them. That's kind of just my personal happy point. Just the tip. Thanks, Clever Crow. Thank you for tuning in. And then you have true originals like Michael Proctor. This is my segue, right? Michael is definitely an original. There is no one like him. And if you don't tune into Crow's Nest, then you're missing out. Let's see here. Everybody says hi to and there's a crow. Yay, it's the crow emoji. Good one, M. Groening. Crow emoji. I'm going to do a little bit of extra lining around the bits here that I feel like the wash isn't quite dark enough. Because although the wash is dark enough definitely to outline the slats on this barrel, I do want a little more definition when I'm going in to do these dark, I'd probably use a dark metal bands around the barrel. I forget what they call those. Staves? No, staves are on the sides. I can't remember what the bands that actually, the technical term is. But you know what I mean. So I'll put in a little extra dark around those to kind of differentiate. What that does also is visually differentiate the texture of the kind of the close-knit texture between the slats on the barrel and the wider, more relief sculpted texture of these bands. So by giving them a heavier line, a darker line, I'm implying a heavier shadow being cast by them, which is definitely true. We're talking about all sorts of interesting things today, aren't we? We're talking about how you make your models look three-dimensional and real, even though they're tiny. There you go with the crow spam, clever crow. Crow spam. That's now a term. So I guess we only got to like a couple of different browns today. But if you guys have any questions, I'm going to actually block something in ruddy leather so that you can at least see how it all plays together. Light leather, and then, well, technically we're using our light leather for wood right now, but you get the idea. Light leather and blonde wood are very similar colors, so very similar. Just going to put a heavier shadow along these bands as well. I.e. lining, it is your friend. Lining is your friend for bringing out all these nice high-profile things. And now all those details stand out because I have lined them. Yay. And we still haven't lost our nice subtle texture of the wood. Oh, Sethany, russet brown is really a unique color. It is an equivalent to artist's burnt umber, which is why I use it all the time. It is just so useful. Probably the... I want to say that you maybe want to use blackened brown and then just add in a little bit of something like, yeah, but that's not going to work. See, it's really built differently. This is, even though this brown is so dark, it's built in a yellow base. And that gives it a huge amount of punch and saturation. So there really is nothing like it. You could maybe use muddy brown and add a little bit of black to it to make it darker, but you're not going to get that intensity. It really is its own beast. It's also loaded with pigment, because you better bet if I'm starting with a yellow base and I want it to get this dark and deep, I had to load a bunch of pigment into this. If you have an artist's tube of burnt umber, that would work. But yeah, so not a lot. I mean, like I said, maybe usually when I'm talking about colors like dark browns that are all in that neutral dark brown territory, I'm talking black and brown, russet brown, and muddy brown, which is 90-28. But muddy brown is just a little bit more red and it's a little lighter. Black and brown is also a little more red and it's a little darker. So it's really still not the same beast as this. You could probably get similar effects, but I don't know that it would work mixed with driftwood like this does. Because it's the intensity, the intense color base of the russet brown that makes it work with the driftwood brown to get that nice neutral highlight. Some colors really are their own beast in MSP, and they're that way for a reason, because I felt like we needed something with that quality in the line. Oh, now we're talking about Scotch. Yeah. Oh, did Mathophile answer my questions on the hoops? Are they hoops? Is that what they're called? Hoops and staves? That sounds familiar. Bilger quarter and head hoop. Thank you, Mathophile. Oh, you're a murderer of crows. Nice, clever crow. Let's see here. And don't forget the bunghole. Yeah, well, that's a clever crow line. Let's see here. I'm glad you like that color, clever crow. It really is. Russet brown is like, I use it for so much. So many things are russet brown in Anne's world. All right, let's grab my reddish leather, ruddy leather, and let's see what we can do with that. We're just pretty much today, Michael, where I'm showing them. If people ask me like, well, what do I do with many things leather? And it's like, well, you could put up to 3 different colors of leather, maybe even more on your model. You just need to change the color of the leather. So let's go for something nearby and do that little bundle there. Let's assume that this is a leather sack. I also have a big nasty mold piece of flash on there that I'm totally taking off. Or maybe we'll do that box. That box could be anything. Well, let's do it. Yeah, we'll do the box. All right. So this leather is a reddish leather. You can right away tell. Ruddy leather. It is. Its color. Its name is what it means. What it is. So right away when you put that on, you can see that it is visually distinct from these other two leather colors that we've done. And that's what you want. You want it to be different. It's when you start putting a bunch of leather on a model and everything looks the same color, or you start putting a bunch of like really intense, like orangey leathers, you can get into trouble pretty fast, depending on what your other color is. But as long as you differentiate your leathers, you can get a good 3 different colors, very distinct colors. Do a light, do a dark, and do a reddish. And you won't get into trouble. They should all work pretty well. You can use black and brown to shade this. Ruddy leather is the shadow of its own triad. It goes with oiled leather, which is why I say you can use an orangey leather or an orange color like a burnt orange to highlight it. But for shading it, you could use a dark brown. You probably would not want to use russet brown here because russet brown, as I mentioned, is a yellow color, right? But this black and brown is more of a reddish, has more of a reddish undertone. So we can get away with shading that with black and brown. Oh, the dragon with the little rainbow fan is adorable, Silverthorn. Oh, that's so cute. the Joe Show. You are so funny. I get called the Bob Ross of painting. This is the second time, at least, that I've been called the Bob Ross of mini painting. That's so funny. I will say, you know, there is definitely a point, and it just keep painting, Joe, is really it. I mean, there comes a point when you've got just so much experience with the different colors and the brush strokes and all of that. Just keep painting, keep trying stuff, because you'll get there. I do agree that, you know, if I tried to do what Bob Ross did, I would be like, you know, pretty blobby. But as you paint, you will naturally get better brush control. You will naturally get a better understanding of paint consistency. And those two things, like paint consistency, brush stroke, and brush control, those 3 things are just, you know, those are your toolbox, right? That's why we're in pro tips. That's why this is Reaper Toolbox. And all you're doing when you are painting in the beginning is you're starting to build up your toolbox. And then once you have enough tools, then you can start really exploring how to refine them and how to get the best use out of them. It's like learning how to hammer in a nail and then learning how to hammer in a nail like in 2 hammer strokes, right? It takes time and effort and practice and a little bit of experimentation. And then once your muscles get it, they just get it. So think of it like that. You're hammering in a nail. You're just pretty much practicing it until you get really awesome at it. So as I add that shadow, you can see it's really, it brings out that redness nicely. It also, I'm adding a dark neutral brown, so it also makes it a little less poppy, I should say. Oh God, I can't even imagine that peaty beer. I mean, okay, I'm not a Scotch girl too much because the taste of dirt is the taste of dirt. I get it. There are some Scotches I've tried. My ex-husband was an aficionado, and there are some Scotches I've tried that I'm definitely like, okay, that's good. That's good. But sometimes I just don't get it. All right, I'm going to throw some Harvest Brown 9200. It's unfortunately a little bit... I haven't used this for a while, so it's got a lot of binder. So, okay, if you squeeze your paint out and it looks like that with a lot of water in it, that is water. Stop. Shake your paint again thoroughly. There are some bases that are just a little bit heavier in Master Series, and they tend to settle out. You want it to look normal and solid. So there we go. So this by itself might be a little bit... Normally, like I said, I use a burnt orange. I do mix a little bit of the ruddy leather into it. Again, this is just going to taking 2 different colors from 2 different triads and making them work together. So I'm going to mix a little bit of my base color into, or into my highlight color. And then we'll see how that looks. Let me get this out of frame again so we can get this turtle back in where you can see him. And I might even take some of my leather brown and mix it in, actually. I want it to be a little lighter, a little more solid. There we go. But that is definitely a very orangey color. You'll see it. And I mean, if you think about it, often we highlight reds with oranges. So just think about that with leather. I just want a little bit, though. I don't want to lose the reddish hue. And if I do highlight a lot here, I'm going to stipple a little bit too, just to suggest some texture. Remember, brushstroke is important too. It's not always just a line or a blend. Can also go back and get some of my base color and kind of stipple that in, and then do kind of a wet blend to make it look rougher. Let's see if I can get that. There we go. There we go. Hey there, Strange. No, actually. So, on bones, I never prime them. Because some primers, especially spray primers, give you issues. It'll off-gas, the PVC will react to it. So I just wash the model with a bit of dish soap and hot water, and then I let it dry, rinse it, and let it dry in a towel overnight, and I can paint right onto it. The paint has stuck no problem to all parts of this. And I usually use the paint full, either full bore or like a 6-to-1, like 6 drops of paint, 1 drop of water for a base coat. I do find that I can thin my paint a little after I've done the dish soap treatment on these models. So yeah, that's usually what I do. A lot of people will just use paint straight out of the bottle for the first coat, and that's perfectly okay. Most Master Series paint is smooth enough to do that without globbing up detail. I'm going to do a little bit more of that texture that I did there on this side. And in fact, maybe I'll just kind of do some lines over here to kind of imply. And I got a little bit too, I think I got a little bit too dark there. So I'm going to mix a little bit of lighter paint in. And again, kind of a stippling or a liney stroke. All these things, all of these different brush strokes can suggest different textures. So then you get that kind of, you know, lighter texture on the red leather. And you can do the same thing up here because, you know, it would probably have rub off up here. So think about where your stuff would get kind of rubbed off. Don't lose your colors. Make sure your texture is, you know, in scale. A lot of people try to do texture and they do it very heavy-handedly, especially on a tiny model. It can get out of control very quickly. I'm going to do a little bit more stippling in here. There. Now my leather is still red leather. You can see the reddish color, especially when you're going, you know, looking at all three of these. But it also has some nice wear and tear along the edges. I could continue adding in some leather brown. Any orangey lighter color will do, and leather brown or chestnut gold would both be good choices. You can make a lighter color even than that to really do the far edges. And just kind of dot some little irregular dots along the edge of the leather where it would really take wear. Looks like we've got a little bit of a band around this also. So it's going to bring up a little bit more like rub off and battered old attaché case, you know? Yeah, it's like that. Best strategy on what parts to start with first on each mini year paint. Strange, it really depends. Most painters will start one of two ways. They will either start with the skin and work outward. So like if I was working on a human figure, start with the skin, then do the beard, then do the hat and the scarf, work outward. Other modelists will essentially take the part of the model that's biggest. So they might have started with the turtle's body because it takes up the most room, right? Or if you're on a figure like an orc that has a lot of skin showing, or if you're on a figure that has a big cloak, maybe you start with that. But in reality, it really doesn't matter. I've painted all those different ways, and I have the tactic where I just paint one part, finish it, and move on. But other people will base coat the whole mini. There is no best tactic for this. There is a try it and see what works for you. What's intuitive for you? There are so many, that's the answer for so many things in mini painting is, it's just what works for you. I'm actually going to do a mix of the tanned or the leather brown and the harvest brown to make a lighter orange strap that I can put on my red leather attaché case over here, or trunk, or whatever it is. Also, if it was a trunk, we could go a whole bunch of different colors on it also. As I always say, it is so useful to look up various reference photos. And if you look up old steamer trunk, you're going to see all sorts of, leather bound and, different colors and patterns and stickers and wear and tear. You're going to get so many useful photos to try to reproduce. So it can give you some awesome ideas. Always look for awesome ideas. When you're painting anything real, always look it up. Doing a little bit of highlighting here on the upper part. Just mixing in a little bit of creamy ivory to my brown mixture to make that stand out more. There is a note, Valendar. I mean, that's why I don't prime them. I mean, you can prime them if you want, but be aware you could get into trouble. I find that not priming them, I never get into trouble. So that's just it. That's what I have found. Your mileage may vary. And if Reaper says that on their page, or has said it in the past, it is because of that very thing. We want people to get good results every time. We can't guarantee that if you prime the model, you're not going to have a problem, because we don't know every primer and what it does and how it reacts to PVC. So, it's probably better to just say, we recommend that you don't prime your models. But if you want to, your mileage may vary. I know people get passionate about this. I just don't get it. I'm just like, do what works. It really doesn't matter. As long as you have a good experience and it works for you, who cares? Oh, I see. Yeah, that's you're right. You don't have to prime your bones. Yes, you're correct, Valendar. And then people are just misinterpreting it.
Yeah, that's always been Ron's take. Ron's answered this question probably half a dozen times.
Oh
And
yeah.
our only official statement on it is wash it with warm soap and water. Beyond that, it's entirely up to you on preference.
Yeah.
Um, However, we have confirmed there are some spray primers that can not melt the mini, but make it tacky, correct?
Yes, yeah, there are. It's the solvents. The solvents interact with the plastic, and so that's why, we try not to recommend that, just because people could get into a lot of trouble and have problems.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah,
our official recommendation is warm soap and water. That's it.
yeah, I use hot water because, well, sometimes if you've got a curvy model, the hot water can help reset it. It's not as much of a reset as boiling water, but I find it does help with some thin pieces if I use really hot sink water. So yeah. All right. Yeah, yes, Planer. Justin is alive. He's just been sleeping.
Uh, I am a little sleepy, but no, I've been sending emails.
Oh, okay. You've been actually working. He's been insanely productive today, Planer, he tells me.
I've been up. I was up very early this morning.
I'm glad I was not up at very early this morning. So yeah, so there you go. So there's an example of 3 different types of leather that you can do on a model. You can see how this reddish one will work really well against green or blue. Even against purple, it could work. And then this, the lighter one, you could put that on a leather bag very easily. The dark one just kind of, fades out. It's just kind of there. It's a good harmonizing color. If you want a brown that won't clash with anything, that's a great choice. So there you are, everybody. So 3 different colors of leather that you can use on all sorts of stuff. And we didn't use established triads, so now you have some alternate triads. Go back and watch the whole video if you haven't. Hopefully I don't bore your socks off. And do we have somebody to raid, Justin?
Yeah, we'll hear it in just a second. Hey, Planner, how you doing? Also, thank you for the gift subs earlier. I'm sure Ann already thanked you,
Yes,
but
I
thank
did. And Image of Betrayal, thank you. Yes, I'm glad you feel that way. I feel very strongly there is no one right way to paint. I know so many painters who are top notch who do it so differently from each other, and all of them get amazing results. I mean, we wouldn't have all these fantastic styles of painters if we didn't have people who tried to, do their own way and not follow the common, oh, well, this is the way to do it thread, So, yeah, push it. Do it your way. Whatever works for you is
yeah,
the best
because
way.
when you develop your own style, that's how you create styles that I don't know, they create this nice blend where you end up with new.
Yeah, and strange. It's easier to just paint the whole bag first and then just pick out the strap. Otherwise, you're trying to paint around the strap, and I find it's a little bit harder, a little more challenging, and I have to do more touch ups. This way, I don't have to do as many touch ups. So it's again, it's that inside out thing, right? Where you start with the skin and then you work out. Well, here you're starting with the leather, and then you're working out to the things on top of it. So if you think of it that way. But again, that's just how I find that it's easier to do that.
All right, I got a read for us.
What are we gonna raid? Who are we gonna raid?
We're gonna be reading Jimmy the Brush.
It's Jimmy. All right, cool, excelente, fantastic. I thank you all for tuning in. Tomorrow, I don't know, maybe we'll do some turtle skin, or maybe we'll talk about some OSL. You know, even though this is
Either way.
yeah, well, we will be here either way, right? Maybe I should replant this lantern so that it's hanging out in front of the turtle. That would be even cuter.
I agree.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your questions. Remember, we're having an AMA on Friday in 2 days. So if you haven't put questions in an AMA on the Reaper Discord, go and put them in. I can't wait until to get to all these awesome questions. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you guys very much. That's it for the shows for today. Go ahead and enjoy Jimmy's channel. Keep being awesome because that's important. We love you guys and have a great rest of your day and great rest of your week if you're not going to tune back in. But tomorrow we have Ann again in the morning. We have Sadie in the afternoon. Then we have Reaper Live, the premiere show. So thank you guys for coming out and we will talk to you guys later.